And now, our feature presentation.
And now, being recorded in front of a live studio audience of superheroes who are actually introverts, it's the most random show on the internet. It's TBK Live!
Let's start a riot, dance in the fire. Let's take it higher, shine a little brighter. So what you waiting for, waiting for, waiting for? So what you waiting for, waiting for, waiting for? Everybody come on, everybody come on, everybody sing na.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the most random show on the internet. Welcome to a brand new episode of TBK Live. And I feel like I say this every episode, but this time I know I'm right. We've got something special planned for you today. Ladies and gentlemen, joining us on the other end of the tin can and string is comic creator Mark Darden. How are you, sir?
I'm doing fantastic, man. Thanks for that great intro there.
It's kind of our bread and butter, I think, sometimes. So I feel the first question right out of the gate. I mean, you're in comics. How did you discover comics?
Yeah, when I was a little kid, comics were sold still in, they were mostly bought in little news shops and bookstores.
Right.
And so bookstores would have a little rack of comics, the little spindly rack.
Oh, I miss those days.
I just gravitated towards books as a kid and then started looking at the spindly rack and picked up like Richie Rich and Mickey Mouse and Casper the Friendly Ghost and was reading those and liked them. And then I really liked Batman from cartoons. There was the Super Friends cartoon.
Oh, wow.
And Batman, yeah, this goes back. Batman was my favorite. I caught some of the Batman 60s show, and then by random chance, I picked up Batman 404, which was the first Frank Miller issue of Batman Year One.
Tremendous issue.
Yeah. And I owned it for 15 minutes before my parents took it away from me.
Only 15?
Yeah, it was pretty short-lived.
Oh, that had to have been a day. So I take it you go to the bookstore, you have it in your hands, you come home, you start reading it, and then it's just gone.
I didn't even get home with it. I was in the car. I was in the back seat looking at it, and my sister looked over and saw the word prostitute, and that was the end of it.
Oh my god! Do you have that comic now?
Oh gosh, no, they threw it away. Yeah.
Oh, I'm just saying. Do you have a copy of it now?
Oh yeah. I think it was probably about 10 years later. Maybe not quite that long. 5 years later, 6 years later, somewhere in my teens, I was going through a comic store and I was flipping through Batman's section and saw the cover, and it just sort of clicked. Like, wait a minute, I think I know this, and I got it. I got it and opened it and started looking through it and was like, oh my gosh, this is that issue that I had as a kid.
That's fantastic. No, I had to make sure, because if you don't, I know some people listening will be like, we'll send it to him. So,
that'd be sweet.
That has happened before. We actually had a guest a few months ago that got 10 boxes of Pocky, the Japanese candy. And I went, okay, so I probably should start making sure that we have that planned out if somebody says they don't have something anymore. So I was just making sure that you had it before that continued.
Oh, yeah. If 100 copies of Batman 404 showed at my door, I guess I'd have a wall of Batman 404.
That'd be the coolest wallpaper ever.
Yeah. Yeah.
You talk about
just
bragging
that
rights.
One image.
Yeah, bragging rights all the time. Just be like, here's my story, everybody.
Yeah.
So when did you discover your talent for drawing?
Okay, so I don't draw my comic.
Okay.
Yeah, I have some art skills, but never have gotten into illustration.
So you're on the writing aspect of things.
Yeah. So
awesome.
I'm on the writing, and I've written since I was a little kid. I wrote my first short story in, I think, the first grade or the third grade, somewhere in there. So I've wrote stories all through middle school, high school, elementary school. Wrote songs, wrote poems, got into bands, wrote music. And then eventually I saw web comics and thought, oh my, there's a way I could start doing comics. So just started writing comic scripts and figuring it out on how to write a comic script versus writing a story.
What is the difference between writing a comic strip between a story?
Yeah, I mean, a major difference is the artist is going to read most of what you write, other than the dialogue.
Right.
So you don't need to jazz up the descriptions of things because you're not trying to inspire a reader who then has to picture it in their head. You just need to convey the information to the artist so that they can do their thing and create the image that the reader is going to look at. And a lot of times in that case, less details is better.
Well, I was going to say, I'm going to ask, do you usually have an image in your head of what you're wanting while you're...
Yeah, there's definitely times where I have a very solid image of what I'm picturing, but I've learned over time to just give the basics. Sometimes, like the notes that I'll make, if I get a story idea and I write down notes of what the scene is like, that's probably what I should provide the artist rather than going back and going, okay, now that I'm going to take the time to really write this out and flesh out all the details, the artist probably doesn't need all that stuff. That initial idea will probably spark their imagination, and just after that, get out of their way and let them go.
Have you had that moment where your vision was put into art and you went, yeah, this ain't happening?
Actually, there was something where it was really more of a style thing where I was working with one artist and we were going to take on some additional artists to pump out stories a little faster. And we did have one guy, we liked his style. It was really quirky and odd, but the story we got back, the way he was drawing it, just wasn't going to work out. So yeah, I did have to pull the plug once.
I feel like that would be difficult sometimes, though, with just knowing, hey, you're going to do this with your vision and my vision at the same time. You have to be on the same page, and I know sometimes that's got to be difficult.
I think I've tended to look for artists where I look at the work and I like the work, and I work first in short stories. So if I get back something I'm not thrilled with, it's only an investment of 4 pages, so it's not the end of the world.
Right.
And then if I do really like it, then I can funnel more stuff to them. The artist there's several artists I'm currently working with, but one of them, first short story he did, it came back and looked pretty good. And the next one looked a little bit better. And then the next one, I was like, oh, wow, he hit the stride on this. Like, he really got his voice with the character. And so I'm really happy. So also at times I have to give the person time, realizing that I've been working on this much longer than they have.
And patience is not a virtue. If anything has taught me, if it's your baby, you're going to want it as soon as possible too. And I know with stories, it's got to be that way.
Yeah, I suppose that's a learned lesson, that you gotta have patience and give people some leeway, and also accept that just because maybe I don't agree with what I'm looking at, see what other people think.
Right.
Other people may look at the story as told and go, oh my gosh, this is great. And they love it for different things that I, again, having to detach myself from the vision I see in my head to the one that the artist produced.
What's some of your favorite styles of genres to write?
So obviously I dig writing this comedy comic that I'm currently doing. I've also written a story which I've submitted samples, and it's the next thing I really want to get on, that is sort of a gothic horror. It's not horror in the slasher style, but just horror in like scary situation, or what would you do kind of situation. It's got some supernatural element to it.
Right on. More like I was trying to think of a good TV show example, because
something almost like Amazing Stories or The Twilight Zone.
Oh, I love Twilight Zone.
Yeah, where there's sort of a scariness to the situation, but it's not necessarily dangerous to you. It's just like, oh my gosh, what would you do if you were in this situation?
Are you thinking about that as just a stories, or are you thinking about putting it with graphics as well?
Oh, I would want to do it as a 3-issue comic.
Oh, right on. I feel those would be I know for myself, I'm not big into the genre, but I also know that if I'm going to read something like that, I prefer the visual.
Mm-hmm.
So that way you don't have to do the imagination like you said earlier, because the reader sometimes it's hard. It's hard to imagine a character, and it can take you out of a story pretty quick. But when you're looking at comics, there it is.
Yeah, that's pretty true. I actually, when I originally read The Lord of the Rings, I did not know that Merry was a guy. They had 4 hobbits. One of them was named Merry. I just assumed, okay, so there's 3 male hobbits and there's 1 female hobbit in the group, because what dude has the name Merry?
This hobbit does.
Yeah.
That's great.
So when I saw the cartoon, oh, it's all boys.
Oh,
okay.
The cartoon. There's a memory for everybody if you haven't seen that in a while.
Oh, the Hobbit cartoon.
Yes.
That was very well done.
Oh my goodness, we had to watch that in school.
That I would watch the Hobbit cartoon 3 times over before I would watch the Hobbit movie again.
I have to agree with you. I'm 100% in agreement with you on that, because I fell asleep during the Hobbit movies. I think I'm a terrible person.
I did some research on why they did it like they did it, because I was just so befuddled. And when I found out the financing behind it, it started to really fall into place of oh, okay. I could totally see, if I was in their shoes, why you would go for 3 movies. Because they had a situation where with the first movie, they had to divide the profits amongst 4 or 5 different houses. But then when they got to the second one, it cut down to 2.
Right.
So they really needed to stretch it out for financial reasons, which is not great for us, the people.
No, it's not. 9 hours of movie, with the exception of Star Wars. I know. Can't do. So what was some of your writing influences?
Oh, yeah. Gosh, so I mean, I read The Lord of the Rings, so J.R.R. Tolkien, although I don't think that would show up much in Guano Guy, because a lot of my early books that I like to read were fantasy novels. So there was the Dragonlance stories with Tracy Hickman, and I read Conan. So, sorry, I'm blanking on his name at the moment. Robert E. Howard.
Yeah. That
was a really good one. But as far as my comic writing right now with Guano Guy, it's really more from watching comedies, from watching sitcoms.
Ooh.
And I would suppose there's definitely some influence in there from The Tick.
Which
Savage
does come
Dragon.
across, which really does come across in the pages you sent me. It definitely has that Tick feel.
Yeah. Very zany superhero.
So, how do you feel about writing the different genres for comics so far? Between jumping from comedy to something else, or doing horror and then doing this, and do you find that to be a challenge?
I think it's really good because, for instance, referencing over to something else, when I wrote songs, I would write a ballady song. I couldn't wait to write something that was fun and hey, this is a good time song. I was thrilled to get away from writing that ballad, even if I thought it was a good one. So I really, really love my comedy Guano Guy stuff, but I would love to show that, hey, I've got something completely different that I also can tell a good story with. I've got a sci-fi adventure one as well, sitting way back in the banks. It'll be a while before I can get around to it. I have a fantasy story as well, which that one I was shocked I didn't come around to sooner because of all the fantasy reading I did as a kid.
You also sent me in an email that you worked on games.
Yeah, for a couple of years I was working in board and card games.
Yeah, I was going to ask if it was video game or board games, because that becomes a whole different job thing.
Yeah, the board games, I actually was already starting to think like, hey, if I want to do comics, what's something where I could get in and get some actual professional skills and experience that might cross over. And so I did an internship for a game company and then did a freelance editorial project for another one and then got hired on it at Fantasy Flight Games producing. So I did get a chance to learn some skills that help me now producing my own comics.
Well, I'll ask the question, what games have you produced?
So the ones that came out, and I always look for them in stores, and unfortunately I'm not on one where I, see it in store to store. Nexus Ops, which was a remaking of an old classic game, which we added alternative set of rules to that were pretty neat. There was Infiltration. I think that was the biggest thing that I worked on where I really had my hands on it as the core producer. And then there was another game called Mask. And there was a fourth one I was working on, but it didn't end up coming out until later, and someone else had taken over the reins. Actually, there were 2 games I was working on before I left that someone else took over.
So when you're producing, do you write for these games? Do you come up with like rules, or are you just sitting down with a team? How does that work?
Yeah, it is the producer. So it's a very much sort of like the editor of a comic, where you're the guy that oversees everybody else doing work and does work on it. So for instance, the game comes in having been created by somebody. So I don't design their game, but I go through it and try to find where there's a flaw or a hole in how the rules work, or where, if people are playing and somebody takes a certain action and people go, well, wait a minute, how does that actually play out? We need to cover that ground. So we try to find the flaws and fix them, try to make sure all the mechanics work right, thematically attach a theme to it. So when I was doing Infiltration, I got to write little backgrounds for the characters, little personalities for them, something that wasn't originally there. It didn't affect the game mechanics, but just added flavor to it. Come up with names and descriptions for the devices in the game. So again, not affecting game mechanics, but just adding flair to the game. And then doing the layout of the books, working with the graphic design team, doing editorial work.
So you had your hand in a little bit of everything with the board games.
Yeah. As the producer, you kind of touch on everything a little bit, but a lot of it is also just checking with the design team, like, where are you guys at on this? Here's something I need. Like, I would have to turn to them and, hey, for the layout of the books, here's a few things that I need so that I can then lay this out. But they would then provide the graphics, and the manual would already be put together to an extent with all the graphics in place, and then just the tools for me to finish it out.
I think this is the first time I've ever heard board games described to me like this. Like, all I know is you go to the store, you buy them, you play them. That's it. And I know there's people behind them, but you never get to hear that.
Yeah, there's a lot of people behind them.
So this is really awesome for me, where I'm a board game person. I love board games, and knowing how all the process is, I'm going to probably respect it a lot more than even I did. So I really appreciate that, because, I had no idea.
Oh, yeah. And I have seen when people make games privately, sometimes the team will be maybe 3 people doing most of the work, and then they'll get outside artwork done, but you have a very small team. But at a game company, let's see, I produced, someone else created the game. There'd be at least one graphic designer who often had help from another. And then as far as the artwork in the game, there might be 100 artists on tap who each get like 3 pieces to do each. And their styles go well enough together that it looks pretty seamless throughout. Because if you consider a game has, say, 100 cards, and each of those cards needs a piece of art, you're probably not going to send all 100 to one person. You're going to give each artist a few of those, because it's got to get done.
My mind is blown. I'm sitting. I actually probably did think it was just all the same artist this whole time. Well, hey.
There are some games where all the artwork may be by one person if there's not a ton of card art. For instance, if there's just a few token pieces
Right.
and a map, it may be one artist. But if there's 100 or 200 cards, that's a lot of drawings for one person to draw color, and generally it's a side job.
Right. So I'll get back to comics. Who were some of your comic inspirations in the writing department?
Absolutely. So, like I mentioned, the Tick was a funny book that definitely helped inspire this. The Savage Dragon, so Eric Larson, I really liked how he wrote that book, where it had some seriousness to what the superhero was doing, but it had a lot of fun with it. Like, the superhero may be saving the town, but at the same time will just crack a few jokes at the villain, or even make fun of his situation.
Those are the best stories, I'm telling you.
Yeah, that was very much a good one. Also, the writer for The Goon, I really liked his work. His book has an interesting slant. It doesn't take itself too seriously, but it's very well written. And it also has some little funny asides that occur. And it was another one where I thought, okay, if he can do that, I suppose I could do Guano Guy.
Well, I mean, that is the reason we're here, isn't it? One of the reasons is Guano Guy. And, yeah. So how did this come about? I mean, I figure you're just sitting there one day and it just hit you, or was this a plan over time, or?
Yeah, it's definitely a book that sort of evolved. I have another book. There's another superhero book that I want to do that would also be sort of silly and funny, but it was a much bigger team and a much bigger concept. So instead of starting with it, I pared down to something smaller that could sort of lead up to it, which is where Guano Guy kind of came in.
You've got to tell me how you came up with the name.
Yeah, I was thinking, it being a sillier book, I didn't want to do the standard where it's, say, Superman, Spider-Man. They use man in all the titles. I thought, well, Guy is kind of funnier and more casual. And the first couple of stories, there were a few stories I was writing where I'm clearly spoofing on and having fun with things that you would see in Batman.
Now I get it.
Because I've got that one little short story where I wrote it, where it was just all about misusing the ability to slip out on people silently.
That's fantastic.
Where Batman always does it in tactical situations, but Guano Guy used it for social situations.
That's a superpower a lot of my friends have. Just saying. That's great.
It'd be awesome if a conversation is just dragging on in a direction you're not interested, and you could just slip out, and the person's like, "Oh, I guess they're gone."
Yeah, they're gone, and you're just left there with a bewilderment on your face. Great stuff. So, is this based on loosely someone you know?
Oh no, it's just very silly.
I have to ask because I figure a lot of people get inspiration from themselves. So,
yeah, and several people have asked me that. They're like, "Is this really you just writing about yourself?" I'm like, "Do I come across as a jerk like that?"
Have you ever slipped out of a panel like that yet? Oh my goodness. So what is the future for Guano Guy?
Yeah, so I'm currently putting together 40 pages for a large issue, which would be the 5th issue, although a double size, and launching a Kickstarter in a couple weeks. And then I'm still looking for a company to publish and produce through. I think getting on board with a company would do wonders so that have a team and have some advisement and help and getting the word out to more folks and building up a fan base, and being able to get into diamond distribution and get into stores. I would like to reach the world with this silliness and hopefully entertain people.
Oh, it is funny. I am going to tell everyone now, it is funny because I sat there, was reading the ones you sent me to get ready for this interview, and I was laughing so hard. And I went, yeah, this is something I would buy. So is it right now just digitally or?
Yeah. So right now it is digitally available on Comixology and Comic Central, and then there are 10 stores in Florida that have some copies. So that's useful for people in Florida, but not outside of
I was
it.
going to say, hey, everybody, if you want to drive to Florida.
Yeah, and I've been hitting shows in Florida, but that's another reason I'm doing the Kickstarter, because anybody anywhere in the country can order all the books I got so far and get their hands on them and get them in one shipment.
So your Kickstarter launches, what day are you looking at?
So it's going to launch August 15th.
How much plans do you have? Like, do you have your goals set up already? Are you?
Yeah, I've got goals set up and got products. Almost everything is completely done. Got a few more short stories that I'm working out as we go.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, we'll have the link for that when it goes live, by the way, everybody. I'll make sure I get it from you. And we'll put it on the website for everybody to check out. I got to ask this because I know that you are distributing in digital form mostly right now. How do you feel with digital comics versus actually having the real thing?
Yeah, I like both. Because I also do comic reviewing myself. So a lot
that's
of times
awesome.
I'm reading digital.
Right.
And I like digital from the standpoint of if I'm traveling somewhere, it's a lot easier to just have your iPad with you and read things on the go. So for that reason, it's fantastic. But I also still really enjoy single issues in my hands, being able to read through and enjoy the feel of it. And
there's just something magical about having that paper.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep, it is neat. And occasionally getting a book that you like signed by the people who worked on it. It'd be tough to, I guess you could get a digital signature on your...
Get it on the iPad, like, I figure...
Yeah.
Someone's going to do that now. You know that, right? I don't know if it's happened yet, but...
Yeah, I don't see any reason you couldn't. You could just walk into the convention and like, here's my digital comic, here's the pen, can you just write over this? And yeah.
That would be crazy. Now, I want to know if anyone's ever done that. Send us a message. tbklive@tbkmagazine.com. Let us know if you've done this. Because if you have, I need to talk to you. I've got to ask you questions. So what is the ultimate goal besides getting them into comic book stores and getting all that? Like, I mean, is there... How do you go about getting a company? Like, let's go with that. Because, I mean, I'm still not sure. Comic book world is still a mystery to me.
Yeah, to get with a company, it's really more a matter of proving yourself, showing that you're going to stick with it, showing that you have talent, that you can get work done. So when I'm doing shows, I'm also talking with companies, and they're seeing that I have more than one comic, that I've made several, getting to know me as a person and see that I'm the kind of guy they would like to work with and who will get work done and meet a deadline. So it's kind of like any other business, really, where you have to prove yourself.
And going from con to con is going to do that. It's crazy.
Going to cons definitely gives you a chance to talk with the companies in person and show them your stuff in person and them get to know you.
So, do you have any weird con stories so far? I figure since you told me in the email you've been hitting up cons a lot this year, I figure you probably have one of those weird convention stories.
Yeah, I suppose the weirdest thing I saw was somebody was running a illegal gambling scam.
Wait, what?
They got fined
Hold
and
on.
asked to leave.
What?
Yeah, that was unfortunate. It wasn't good for a show. You know, like the ball games where somebody can pay $5 and they're basically given random chances, except that the prizes weren't really in there. Like the balls that they had to get to actually get the real prizes just weren't available.
See, here I'm thinking I've got cosplayers playing craps on a corner. I did not know where this was going.
Yeah. Now I could see cosplayers playing some type of, but they wouldn't be playing craps. They'd be playing something from Star Trek or a game they found in the Game of the Thrones novels.
Yeah. Quidditch.
Yeah,
taking bets on
yes.
Quidditch games outside the convention.
hmm Yep, some brutal cribbage though. Like brooms are broken.
Oh my goodness. Oh geez. So is there any stories out there? Any of the main characters that you have your eyes set on that's the goal one day to write a story for that character?
Oh yeah. I mean, with my sense of humor, I'm already sitting on a full length Deadpool story that I'd love to get out. Um, but that's going to take a lot of work. I would have to prove myself with a number of indie books before somebody's going to give me a shot at that one.
Any other besides Deadpool?
Of course, I would love to write Batman. He is my favorite hero of all time, so that would be one. Funnily, is I really like Captain America, but I don't know if I could ever write him. I even have military background, but I just haven't really thought of a Captain America story I'd want to tell.
I guess I could ask you the dreaded question since you said you're a fan of Batman. I mean, what was your reading comparison with Marvel and DC? Which one did you tend to read more?
Oh yeah. So as a kid growing up, I think for DC, I exclusively read Batman. I don't think I ventured out into their other books much at all. Even though I liked The Flash from television and liked Green Lantern as well from television, but it's almost exclusively Batman reading. With Marvel, I read X-Men was major one, and of course they had X-Men and they had Uncanny X-Men and X-Force. I read Captain America, and I read The Ghost Rider for a little while. I read Spider-Man for a while. It's pretty mainstay books, and I would delve into some other ones here and there for a little while. And then I kind of went indie as a kid at one point where I stopped with Marvel and DC and was reading just about anything Image would come out with. Started reading Valiant and started hunting for things from Dark Horse that I would want to read, and even going further and trying some other smaller companies and just giving their titles a try.
This is just for everyone listening. If you haven't checked out independent comics, there is more out there than Marvel and DC. I'm just going to let you guys know. And so many good titles.
Yeah.
So many.
There really are, and because I'm making an indie title, so I get to know a lot of indie people from the shows and get into their books, and then I also am part of a comic review show where we review indie comics, so that causes me to read a lot more. They're running a ton of, just the world of indie writers and artists are making stories that are so vastly different than the majority of the mainstay.
How do you feel about all these characters having different titles? Like, there's 24 Batman titles. I mean, I don't know how many there are, but it feels like that. How do you feel about that? Because I think it's just too much.
I do think it makes it difficult for a fan. I'm comfortable with a great character having more than one, particularly if there's a purpose to the book. Take Batman, for instance. If Detective Comics was the Batman stories that featured and really focused on actual detective work, if The Dark Knight was the dark version of Batman, like the real gritty, realistic world of Batman that's not for kids, and then if the general Batman story was the more fun, not easy-going Batman, but
the more lighthearted,
something that everyone could read. Yeah, lighter side of Batman with the Robins involved. I could understand that. But it's definitely difficult as a fan of Batman to have 4 mainstay titles with 2-3 minis going on
not
every
to
month.
mention crossovers and different titles with that one. And I lost count. Like, I just couldn't keep up anymore.
And actually, what saddens me about it is because a lot of it is really good, but it's so many that I think even good stuff then gets lost.
When it's quality or it's quantity over quality, even though the quality is strong, there's just so much.
Yeah, and as a comic reader, if I'm going to read a bunch of different comic books, I can't read 7 about the same character because of my budget. So I may have to pick just my 2 favorites of this character so that I can read about somebody else too.
Yeah, the world of comics right now, the main two is just crazy to me. And this is one reason we love interviewing independents, everybody, because we want to get their stuff out there. Because there is so much good content. Support your independent comic artists and writers. So much, everybody. Which is why we're doing this interview right now. I feel I got to ask more about Guano Guy because I'm super stoked. I think I'm going to end up ordering all of the digital issues when this show's done.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Yeah. Well, if you want to wait 2 weeks and grab them as part of the Kickstarter,
I might do that too because I'm going to support. But I got to ask. I mean, when the pop culture references, at least in the one you sent me. Is that an ongoing thing through all of them?
Yeah. I think that, there's just different references that pop up in different places. At times I'm making fun of commercials. At times I'm making fun of sports. At times I'm spoofing things I've seen in comic books. Sometimes I've got a story where I'm spoofing the process. Sometimes there's my love of music pops up in it, my love of films. So I don't know that every story would always have pop culture reference, but it definitely is something that would keep coming around.
There is always some sort of reference in a story, and you just have to find it, kind of thing.
I definitely think every issue's got something, for sure.
This is one of the most fun comics I've read. And for me to sit down and go, okay, I just want to binge read, because I don't do that very often. I have to tell you, the artwork in it's great too. I love the artwork.
The different artists have done a fantastic job.
Because it all just flows together so well. So well. And the story itself, I don't know what numbers you sent me. So I'm kind of just like, I'm just going to rebuy them when it comes out.
Then you'll see them in order. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's the best thing. Like, I feel like I just discovered a brand new television show somewhere in season 3, and now I've got to go back and just watch it all.
Well, and luckily, quite a bit of Guano Guy, because of these short stories, is a lot like a sitcom where you really can just pop in and you can catch an episode and you're going to be familiar with, if you know the character, you're familiar with who they are.
Oh, let's just ask it just because out of fun. If Guano Guy becomes a TV show, who plays your character?
Well, when I do the stories, I actually do their lines in voice when I write them, just to make sure that I keep their individual character voices different.
Can I just ask something really quick before you continue? You have to make that a bonus on your Kickstarter. That if someone donates so much, you get to hear that process.
I agree with you. One of my intended stretch goals is that I'll do the comic in voice.
Oh my goodness.
So someone could get their copy, and as they look at it, it'd be me reading the comic, but in the character voices.
That's fantastic. All right, go ahead. I'm sorry to interrupt you. I had to say that.
Yeah, if by some miracle I ever could get this to being a cartoon on Cartoon Network, Comedy Central, or somewhere, I would love to get to actually do the voice of Guano Guy and Mr. Marvelous Man, and a lot of the side guys. Dice Cube, I have a voice for. The Prankster, I've got voices for all of them. If it was going to be live action, who would do it? Oh my gosh. I think I would stay out of that.
It's a little different doing the voice acting.
to talented talent scouts and let them do their job and not.
I figure I'm going to get a ton of hate mail if I don't ask this. Can you do Guano Guy's voice?
Yeah.
I told you this interview is not what you were going to be expecting.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Guano Guy's voice was designed to be very much like a walking advertisement, with quite a bit of bravosity, and sometimes I think he sounds a little like Gaston from Beauty and the Beast.
That just made my day.
So then I juxtapose his voice to Mr. Marvelous Man, who sounds like, "Hi, I'm Mr. Marvelous Man, and while I would never actually eat a killer burger because of the fat content, I don't mind taking a lot of money to tell you guys about it."
Now I really do want that package.
So I do think if people know what Mr. Marvelous sounds like, it very much changes the viewpoint. Like,
Oh, definitely.
through reading him, you get that he's sort of goofy and doesn't quite get social cues. But to hear it in his actual voice, like, oh gosh, yeah.
There's going to be
He's
people
really-
listening to the show who's going to buy this and now read it in those voices because that's all they're going to hear.
Right. Well, think about like everyone who reads Batman. Like,
Oh, you're
what
doing
percentage
it.
of people, when they're reading it, hear Mark Hamill's voice in their head?
Oh, my goodness. So to let you know, when I read Batman now, with Joker, that's true. 100%. It is Mark Hamill. However,
Yeah.
with Batman's voice now, it's not, and I can't think of who, Kevin, is it Kevin? I can't think of the guy who plays Batman. I've seen him.
Oh, Kevin Conroy.
Yeah, Kevin Conroy. I knew it was Kevin. It's not his voice now I think of a mix between Christian Bale's voice. Because now all I hear is that, "I'm Batman" voice. Every time now I read Batman, I'm going, that's not Batman. Or Adam West. I will read it as Adam West.
Yeah, I like Adam West, but yeah, that Christian Bale Batman voice just got so popular because so many spoofs were done of it.
We do one on this show. I can't
College
say
Humor
much.
did a bunch of spoofs of it that were great. The Batman animated movie.
Yes. The Lego.
And that voice is a lot easier to do. I think most people can do the "I am Batman" voice,
Because it's that perfect mix of let's grovel it up, and that's all you have to do.
Yeah.
See, maybe the easiest impression for everybody.
Mm-hmm. I liked the Bane voice, though, that the guy did.
Tom Hardy?
Yeah, I actually really loved how unscary that voice was, because it was almost like his character was saying, "I scare you so much by my presence, I don't have to raise my voice to intimidate you."
That's very true.
Like, this voice comes out and it's just creepy because there isn't an effort to intimidate you. You're already scared, and I know you're already scared.
He was not wrong, because I am that the Bane scenes just went. And which, granted, I don't know if I like this version of Bane compared to the one that we grew up with.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something I still struggle with, going, I still like Mexican wrestler Bane.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, the Bane in the video games.
Yep.
He was pretty great.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. So I feel like before we wrap this up, you got to plug some social media stuff. I figure you've got places for people to go.
Oh, absolutely. So, I mean, I'm trying to get the word out about the book every which way that I can. So Instagram, Guano Guy Comics, is a really easy way to touch base with me. Or on Twitter, Guano Guy Comics. And also Facebook. So originally my Facebook page, When Claws Were Cool, is another way people can get in touch, because I'm posting everything.
When Claws Were Cool?
Yeah, that was actually the original name of the comic. And I changed it because that one is really long, and it doesn't immediately tell people it's a funny book either.
I thought of, all I could see is Wolverine just standing there looking sad. That's all I could think of.
Which is not too far off from what the original short story was going to be.
Right on. Right on. I have to say, thank you for joining the show today.
Oh, appreciate it. Yeah.
And
Happy
guys,
to take the time.
we will post the link to your Kickstarter when you get that up and running. And
Okay.
we'll do a whole
That'd be
article for you, because I personally believe in this comic. And I think everyone should at least take the time to experience Guano Guy.
Yeah, I really like this compliment show format you got going.
Yeah, no, it's well, and I mean, I like I said, if for me to go, okay, it's honestly one I would go out of my way to read because right now the one I'm reading constantly is Squirrel Girl.
Oh yeah,
and
yeah.
I love humor in my comics, and I don't like I'm not big on dark gritty, and this is the type of comic that appeals to me as a reader. Because if I can laugh in my comics, that's what I remember about growing up with comics, with the exception of Death of Superman. So, because that was really dark. But
yeah. Looking back, killing off the most beloved characters, it's a pretty rough move.
I know there are some of those people that did laugh when Superman died, and those people are cruel and heartless. I may have been one of them. Okay, so but thank you for joining the show. Guys, this week on tbkmagazine.com, by the way, and like I said, we'll have all of Mark's info going up when the Kickstarter comes out, and you can learn more about Guano Guy, and I'll post links to it in this show description. This week on tbkmagazine.com, we are starting the Ultimate Nerd Debate 2. You might enjoy this, Mark.
Mm-hmm.
DC versus Marvel.
Oh, that's the ongoing battle, isn't it?
16 characters from Marvel, 16 characters from DC, tournament format.
Oh.
Marvel will be on one side of the bracket, DC on the other. The finals, the ultimate DC versus Marvel showdown.
Now, are they going to actually fight for real? Is that the concept? Is if they actually fought, who would win? Or who just is a better character?
I think it's a both thing. Like, okay, if you were to take these two characters and they fought, who would win? But also, like, who do you love more?
But like, who is a better... Like, if you... I think here's an interesting way to format it. If you could start a company tomorrow and you could draft any 16 characters from Marvel versus any 16 from DC, who would have the more successful company?
It'd probably be... I don't know if I should say that now. It'd be DC.
They have more standalones.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think the three, and when I say this, everyone I'll get hate mail, and I'm fine with it. I think the three biggest comic characters are DC.
With thinking Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman.
Yep.
Green Lantern's pretty popular.
Because
on the Marvel side, it would be tougher to get a list of solo characters.
Well, we were trying to decide who are going to be, like, in our next episode of Live, we are actually going to fill out the bracket with the host. And I went, okay, so because I don't know about you, but I'm having problems with the DC already of who's going to be the final character. This is a fun episode. I don't even care anymore.
Oh, yeah.
I don't even care. But this is... Because I don't know if it's going to be Wolverine, Spider-Man, or Deadpool.
Oh, for your final in Marvel. Yeah.
Because I don't have anybody for Marvel outside those three. Like, I like Captain America, but I don't see him beating Spider-Man.
Yeah, I mean, Captain America was very popular at a time. I don't know if he's doing as well right now. Thor's had a pretty good run. Iron Man has had some time.
Yeah, it's weird because I mean, Marvel made these characters I feel more lovable by the mainstream audience because of the movies and not so much the comics themselves. Where
DC is actually
the comics were the reason that
has
people
continued to hold strong with the comics.
Yeah,
and also some TV shows and the animated cartoons they make.
Which I love DC's cartoons. I don't know about you. They are some of the best animated stuff out there out of the big two for superheroes. But
yeah, that's some very good cartoons.
How do you feel about the DC streaming service?
I have not gotten into anybody's individual streaming service.
Oh.
Yeah. I don't know if and when I'll get on board with one of those. That's really kind of narrow to get onto
just to get
a
onto
platform
one,
that's just for one particular company's product.
Well, there is a plus side with DC's. They're also releasing their comic book catalog.
That is a plus. Yeah.
And I went, to read Action Comics 1, that might be kind of worth it.
So for DC's platform, they're just going to do like, if you sign on with this, you have access to everything, all our movies, cartoons, comics, anything we do.
Pretty much, yeah.
Okay, that is pretty impressive.
Yeah, no, but it's $79 for a pre-order fee.
Oh,
That's where the problem lies for me.
$79 a pre-order fee.
Yeah, it's for 1 year though, but I mean, it's still like $79 up front's a lot though.
Wait, $79 for the whole year?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Then that's very comparable to, I think Marvel has $100 a year. You can read all their comics.
Oh, I didn't know. I knew they had one, but I didn't know how much it was.
Yeah. So that's very comparable.
I figure with Disney's streaming service, when it comes out, that'll all be congealed together too.
Mm-hmm. Oh, wow. I mean, yeah, the properties they have access to is...
And the properties they just acquired.
Yeah. Oh, right. Or reacquired Marvel reacquiring itself in a way.
The Disney's going to own The Simpsons. I still to this day cannot believe that.
Oh my gosh. Then that has to change theme parks.
That's what I said. I think Disney World devotes a whole area to The Simpsons.
Yeah, because there's I'm blanking on which theme park it is, but I went to Simpsons Land. It's really cute. I loved walking through Simpsons Land.
It's not Universal, is it?
I think so. Yeah, I think so. And they had a Moe's Tavern, and they had the aliens were running one of the rides, and it was just like
Awesome.
They had hilarious lines. Like, don't worry, simple human, just hop on board. Nothing bad will happen.
Oh my goodness. Got off track. This is what happened.
Yeah.
this is how the show always goes.
I was looking over your show. There's a lot of random stuff that goes on.
It's a constant. It's a thing that happens all the time. It's fun. We never have a dull moment. I do want everyone to check out Guano Guy. I'll put the link up. Mark, thank you for joining us.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Guys, we're going to wrap up this show like we do every episode. By the way, have you ever seen the movie Manos, The Hands of Fate?
Manos, the
Hands of Fate. Yes.
No.
It is the worst movie ever made.
Okay. Cool. Okay.
And we end this show with a character from that movie. Torgo, you know what to do, sir. Take us home tonight.
You cannot stay. The master would not approve.